Now a new trade calling for some of the same contour drafting skills is booming in Britain, guitar making. A year ago, our beat groups were importing their instruments from Holland. Today, because of the fame these kids have acquired, we're not only making them, but we're selling them to countries which once monopolized their manufacture. An electric guitar can be solid with just enough space grouted out to hold the electromagnetic pickups. There'll be 2 miles of fine wire in each of these music boxes, and a dozen different craftsmen will work on them in turn. All this to make a bedlam of adolescent noise. The neck of the guitar with its fingerboard is the critical unit. It must remain dead true under the tension of 6 heavy gauge strings. Nickel-silver frets must be hand-fitted to the rosewood fingerboard. No wonder the guitar boys have to pay so much for their guitars that they've no money left for a haircut. This Romford firm was the first to use polyester spray for finishing. Colours range from sky blue pink to natural wood. There are 11 different types of string in use. They can be made of steel, copper, or nowadays nylon, appropriately enough for the instrument that has become the young man's ladder to fame. Surprising when you consider the noise they make, that each and every guitar is scientifically tuned, just as if they were real musical instruments, and then burnished to a mirror gloss.
It's wallpaper that's the cause of all this artistry, for behind Pa's painstaking plans for patching up the parlour is a complex and colourful world. It's a world of many skills, a peaceful world where routing means the delicate art of cutting the artist's design into sycamore wood. The routing machine is not revolutionary. It was introduced in 1920 and is guided round the traced design, leaving it in relief for printing. Colours are mixed exactly to match the artist's original scheme. Colour abounds here, swirling colour that spins you on to the next stage in this world of wallpaper, the printing. Old world hand block printing that Caxton created. Even in these machine-mad days, it's still the best for special work. This is the 3rd colour being printed on a 3-colour design. How about a wall full of peacock's power? If not, there's plenty more to choose from. A handy hand printer can knock his block off 800 yards of paper a day. That block's taken from a William Morris design and is 70 or 80 years old. If the artist had realized it would still be admired by countless home decorators, he'd have probably danced for joy. A Morris dance? Wood grain paper passes through 8 processes before it's varnished to give it tone and depth. Watch out for splinters. The design on this paper's printed with glue. This doesn't mean you can hang it up back to front. It's part of the preparation for flock printing, making that embossed velvety paper. The length is placed in the long flocking sieve, which contains the loose flock. He needs that protective mask. Without it, he'd sneeze, sneeze, sneeze all the way home. The flying flock only sticks to the actual design, giving it a relief effect. This is burnishing, making the flock pile lie one way to give it a sheen. Some of this regal paper is hanging in Balmoral Castle.
What a complicated business it is once an optician has tested your eyes and ordered the glasses that your tired peepers may need. The optician or the oculist can check your vision with a variety of lenses after examining the interior of your eye. But it's skilled craftsmen who produce the spectacles he prescribes, starting with a straightforward, good quality glass. That's what they call a blank, and they snap it into strips as you snap a bar of chocolate. You rough shape the glass that will be pressed and ground into precision lenses. Each lens must be a standard weight and size and geometric shape. Like those tin soldiers, spectacle lenses are largely hand-shaped. Half of Britain's population wear glasses, and possibly 1 out of every other 3 should do so too. What is staggering is the amount of individual skill there is that goes into the production of such conveyor belt commodities, where even such things as grinding and polishing have to differ from spectacle to spectacle. Nature arranged that the human eye could see into the distance. Modern life decrees we should spend a lot of time reading or studying things at elbow distance. And that's where the human eye tends to let us down. We need utterly different lenses for close and distant vision. And that's where the real precision skill of the spectacle-making industry comes in. Watch them produce bifocal lenses. Who'd have thought there was so much handwork in the manufacture of a pair of specs? The lens, which was ground with a fine powder and a special fluid, has to be polished and washed before it can be checked and finally tested. Here's one basic industry where automation seems a long way off. Yet you can get the precise spectacles you need, tailor-made, in a matter of hours, even if you plump for handmade colourful frames, which a fretworker can cut. Of course, you can have your frames barreled or mass-produced, but even then the hinges are hand-assembled. This is, surprisingly, the one big industry that brings a bit of personal craftsmanship into almost every household in the country. Assembling frames by hand, millions and millions. It's hard to believe in this age of standardization. Testing too, and testing is crucial. Glasses just have to be faultless, or the whole purpose of having them is turned to nonsense. We could have tailor-made dustbins and teacups and motor cars at not much extra cost if we insisted on the individuality that calls for someone to slip the frames into hot sand to create the elasticity that allows the lenses to slot into place. The result of all this skill? A satisfied customer. Somebody who at last can see what's going on around her, apart from the fact that glasses today can be decorative or dignified, to say the least.
At John Sebastian Morley's shop in southwest London, harps have been cherished since 1816, and they need cherishing. There's a saying among musicians that new harps are harder to come by than tickets to heaven. In fact, the majority of orchestral harpists play on instruments more than 100 years old, and Mr. Morley's firm, far and away the last of its kind in Britain, has not made a new orchestral harp for 40 years. Now, the business here is primarily that of renovating the massive relics of a musical age before the piano made its mark on the drawing room carpet. Here, a new soundboard is being fastened to the belly of a harp, a job that is done frequently because of the 2 tons pull which the strings exert. The strings, by the way, are made mainly of sheep cut. Silk, covered by metal spinning, is the composition of the deeper bass notes. Although, as we said, orchestral harps are made no longer in this country, every detail of the complex constructional techniques has still to be learnt. Such is the majesty of an orchestral harp that its few remaining craftsmen spend as much time French polishing and woodworking as they do actually getting the instrument into musical shape. We wonder whether any other instrument requires so much of the carpenter's art. Some of the carvings seem purposely to remind one of the time when music was artistic. It's interesting, too, to think that all harps have a pedigree and can be traced back to their origins. But that's another story. From these tiny seedlings will grow graceful willows, not planted simply to please the eye, but for a specific purpose. For this is Suffolk, a centre of the cricket bat industry. Here in lovely green meadows alongside running streams, willows grow in their thousands, and in this nursery, young saplings are carefully brought to maturity. When the tree is about 10 to 12 years old, it's in the ideal state for making bats. Having been checked that it's the right size, the trunk must be 10 feet long, the experts arrive to bring it down. This tree should provide 24 blades, which is about the average. One giant in Essex, standing over 100 feet, made more than 1,100. The manufacture of the cricket bat is a curious blend of old traditions and modern methods, to be expected perhaps in a trade 200 years old. For instance, the splitting of the wood here is always done by hand, never by machine. Then the blades will be graded as just another stage in a long process before the wood block becomes the familiar bat. The willow blade is naturally tough, but it must be made harder. This machine does the job with a 600-pound pressure. When the blade has been shaped, it is ready for the splicing of the handle. This is made of Sarawak cane, into which layers of rubber are placed to give extra power. The splice will be so neatly fitted that even left unglued, a match could be played without the handle coming out. There are strict rules about the size of the bat, due to the easygoing regulations in the game's early days. When betting was common, side stakes of £1,000 were common. With those sort of sums in the balance, some unsporting gents would open the innings with a bat so wide it would completely hide the stubs. The final touches cannot be given by machine. A craftsman's trained eye and instinctive feel for the right shape and balance does the job of shaping the bat swiftly and well. The cricket bat is almost finished. Twine binds the handle to give it the traditional grip. 12 years have passed since the tree was planted from which this bat was fashioned. A dozen years of care and skill giving the ideal product, a cricket bat shaped for surroundings like this.
The pride and perfection of Staffordshire pottery makers is blended into every piece of china and earthenware. You see it all in the sensitive and subtle touch of the hand ornamenters. Yes, pride and perfection. Here the engraver taps out the various patterns on a copper cylinder, light and shade effects being achieved by the depth of the punched dots. And so the pattern is transferred to the plate. There's a deceptive simplicity about the operation, yet precision is as vital here as it is for the hand decorators who faultlessly enrich the patterns with ceramic colors. How little techniques have changed since Josiah Wedgwood built his famous Etruria factory and garden village 200 years ago. Traditions have been cherished by generations of the family. In an age of automation and mass production, only the delicate skills of true craftsmanship can fashion real beauty. Possession of such pottery is not only admired, but treasured. Such masterpieces have graced the dining tables of kings and queens, statesmen and art connoisseurs, winning prized reputations for the men and women of the potteries. Old Josiah would have been proud of them. Well, if tomorrow's campaigns are to be fought with motor vehicles, today's motorists have a war of their own to contend with. The battle of the parking meters. We're watching the monsters being made. Basically, a parking meter is an accurate alarm clock. There are well over 25,000 of them in this country, most of them made at this Kingston-on-Thames factory. But here's one aspect of the parking meter story that mitigates the misery a bit. They're a big British export. For every 2 of them put up here at home, 5 go overseas, to Hong Kong, France, Italy, Holland, Germany, and Australia. You see, we aren't the only sufferers. They're a worldwide scourge, if that's how you view them, but they're a sizable source of overseas revenue, a thought that half reconciles us to all the motorist sixpences they eat up here at home. By the time a parking meter leaves the factory, you can be sure it will meticulously tick away the expensive minutes and that it's practically burglar-proof. Find the right key to open a meter up, and you're faced with a locked and coded coin box. You'll find, too, that a lightweight coin simply won't register. They're worse than one-armed bandits and just as hungry for your cash. What a complicated business it all is. And now it's testing time. They keep a supply of coins from all the 50 countries that import these meters, including square ones from Ceylon.
The wealth of new materials on which a modern designer can draw would probably have made his predecessor of 100 years ago turn green with envy. Yet in this studio workshop in Chipping Campden in Gloucestershire, we are concerned mainly with a metal that has been worked for many years, namely stainless steel. The range of articles that have come under the critical eye of the modern designer has also increased. The everyday cutlery, which we tend to take for granted, is the current concern of brilliant young designer Robert Welsh. From the drawing board, the artist gives way to the craftsman, as a piece of stainless steel undergoes the first part of its transformation into an elegant spoon. In this particular case, Robert Welsh has been commissioned to design cutlery that is elegant, will blend with modern surroundings, and can be comfortably used to eat a meal, this last being of prime importance. What's the use of an elegant knife if you find that you can't balance your peas on it? This talented young man, still in his 20s, already has a formidable number of awards for his work, which has been exhibited or commissioned by the Worshipful Company of Goldsmiths, the Victoria and Albert Museum, and the Imperial College of Science, to mention only a few. The spoon, part of a set destined to grace the modern interior of a new passenger liner, the SS Oriana, takes its rightful place on the table. For the benefit of the stewards, there are special extra broad serving spoons which will bring the professional touch to the most ham-handed amateur. No more steamy knot veg down her Grace's neck, even in the roughest weather. Robert Welsh is one of the first in this country to succeed in designing marketable modern cutlery, previously a virtual monopoly of the Scandinavian countries. The practical aspect of design is clearly demonstrated here. A notable property of stainless steel is its poor conductivity of heat. Thus, the tea in the pot stays hot longer and the handle doesn't scorch your fingers. Manufacturing expert Mr. Wiggin collaborates closely with the designer. It is encouraging to find a young man who, practically single-handed, has brought this country to the forefront in a field of modern design so sadly neglected here since the war. The drawing office of a car-producing firm, a firm with the output of over 1 million vehicles a week. Fantastic figures. But they're used to them here because ever since the company started, more than 250 million Matchbox models have come off the assembly line. In spite of what you might think, producing toy cars isn't child's play. It's a highly organized operation requiring similar skills to the production of the full-size car. After the design details have been settled, a carefully carved wooden model, every detail exact but 5 times the size of the intended miniature, gives the toolmaker the shape from which he cuts the steel die from which the models will come. Some of the die casting machines can produce about 7,000 sets a day, and here's just one. These rough castings will drop to a conveyor belt which carries them to the next stage, known interestingly as rumbling and fettering. Castings are, of course, mixed up with a great deal of unwanted material. This is easily removed, and the waste goes back to the foundry where it is remelted and used again. The firm only began operations just after the war. A couple of ex-servicemen pooled their gratuities and started making die castings for industry in an almost derelict pub. Most of the machines they designed themselves, so that one day when business was slack, they were able to experiment with a small model of the coronation coach. And they sold more than 1 million copies. Suddenly realizing the kind of market available, they concentrated on producing these perfectly detailed models. One good idea, 2 men, and millions of satisfied customers. The models are perfect in detail for the most critical collector, yet fun for the children. This is an industry where even the boss gets fun out of his work.
A fanciful piece of confectionery you can't buy in the packets that come off this big business production line. But even here there's knowing craft that's fascinating to see, because the day of the handmade sweet is not done. And that's no humbug, even if that really is. They call that a pulling machine. It aerates the syrup mixture until it gets a light color. This is how they make old-fashioned mint humbugs at Bury in Lancashire. They start with a chewy caramel centre, and from there it's quite an art getting a giant striped sweet assembled. And one would wonder just how they cut it down to size. But that's a long way off just yet. This is a man's work, and that means manhandling an 84-pound lump that would be a darn sight harder to get your teeth into than that sugar sculpture at Blenheim Palace. The things that happen to sweetmeat on its way to our watering mouths. This is where sweetmeat becomes a sausage in confectioner's jargon, and the work by hand is almost over. This marvel of a machine rolls and stretches that giant sweet into a thin striped humbug line, all in one movement. But it starts with something of a wrestling match. They say a woman's work is never done. Margaret here makes 60 million mint humbugs every year on this machine. Out they come at the other end in the familiar suckable size, just right for those with a soft spot for a good long chew.